Good morning. Hi.
Good morning.
Hello. Welcome to another video Facebook Live. This one is really exciting. We've got Lorna from Positive Steps Physiotherapy, who's going to be talking to us about developmental building blocks, and that's very exciting. So if anybody's watching, welcome. Nice to see you. And if you're watching the replay, please say that you're watching the replay so we know you're here. If you've got any questions, put them into the comments and I'll keep an eye on them. And then at the end, we'll have a chat and Lorna can answer any questions you've got. Yeah. So thanks, Lorna, for being here, and over to you.
It's my absolute privilege, and thank you so much for asking me to do this. So my name's Lorna Saunders. I own Positive Steps Physiotherapy. So just a little bit of background about who I am and kind of how I got to where I've got. So I worked for a long time within the NHS, and then one thing and another, I kind of started doing a little bit of private practice, and then I made the leap 8-9 years ago out into the private world, and Positive Steps then was formed, and it's just grown and grown really. So we treat children, and we also treat adults that have got kind of what we call neuro rehab needs. So adults that have had strokes or adults that have had head injuries, and we are a team of 4 now. So we're a team of 4 physios and physio assistants. And we've worked all the way through the pandemic, really. We had to switch our clinic virtually. Obviously, in the first lockdown, we did a switch and we were able to keep seeing our clients, which was amazing. And I started doing more and more Facebook Lives and started to kind of, get the word out there. And that's where this kind of came from, really, is to just share a little bit of our passion for helping others and a little bit of information that will just help as many people as possible. So what's today all about? So we're going to talk about developmental building blocks, like Ron said. We're going to look at what's important with development, and we're going to look at why it's important. I'm going to give you some hints and tips that you can take away to try. And we're going to talk as well about what I call purposeful play. So one of the most focused on positions for children is tummy time. It's very much been the kind of the in thing for a long time. And I know a lot of parents have kind of parent guilt when their child hates being on their tummy, and they kind of will say to us, "Oh, I've tried, but they won't go on their tummy." And we see that a lot. So it does get a lot of focus, and it is really important. And it's really important because it helps a child work on their head control. It helps a child work on weight bearing through their upper limbs, so getting these little shoulders a bit stronger. And it also works on their middle, their core, so getting their trunk a little bit stronger. But it needs to be fun, okay? So the child's got to be motivated, they've got to enjoy it. And it's got to be achievable. And I think that's partly why so many people kind of try and fail. Because it's not achievable, the child hates it, they cry every time they put it in their tummy, and it just feels like, it feels like an uphill battle. So I have a little assistant today to let me show you kind of some positions. So I've got to introduce Joe. So this is Joe. This is one of my boys' dolls from when they were little. I used him loads, and I still do, in the virtual sessions that we do. So we did all virtual sessions during the first lockdown. We very much now run what we call like a hybrid clinic, so some virtual, some face-to-face. And Joe helps out loads, because I can show parents how to handle, how to encourage positions, and they can go away and try, rather than trying to just explain. So he's been great. So we're going to use Joe to show you a little bit of tummy time. If you put a child flat on the floor, that is the hardest way to do tummy time, and that is when a child gets stuck. And if they get stuck, they start to get frustrated. And if they get frustrated, they get their hair off, and they don't want to do it. And you're in a bit of an upward spiral. So if he's little enough, so obviously Joe's little, if your child's little enough, then they can go on your chest. So having a child on your chest is just as good. So if I'm side on, and if he's on my chest, what he's going to want to look at is my face, because that's what little children want to look at. So he's going to lift his head up, he's going to push through his arms, and you've got tummy time. Again, if they're small enough for you to pick up, the Superman hold, so you can either hold them on one arm, if they're really little, or you can use 2 arms, again, only if you're able to do it. But you can have them looking at a screen if they're doing, if Granny or someone's on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever. Or you can have them looking in a mirror. Or you can have toys stuck on mirrors or shiny surfaces. Lots of toys out there have the suction cups. I've got some really brilliant ones that spin, that light up. I've got some light up little balls that have all suckers on them, and they'll stick to patio doors, they'll stick to mirrors, they'll stick to wardrobes quite often, and that way you can just use this position to encourage them to look up. So you're giving them all the support they need in their trunk. You can help them bring their arms forward. So that's a nice one to do, but obviously when they're that little bit smaller. So the other way to do it is to use something rolled up. So I'm going to bring the camera down so you can see Joe on my table, and you'll not see me, but then I'll bring it back up. So if I bring the camera down so you can see the table. So I've got a towel here, and you can use the towel all rolled up in different positions. Obviously don't face plant the child. So if the towel's quite small under his arms, he can get his little, can you see? He can get his little elbows bent, and can you see how they're like right under his shoulders? Okay, and he can push through his little elbows and he can look up. So again, he can either be playing with something on the floor, the table, the bed, or you can get him to look up at something. If I make that roll a little bit bigger, then he can still go over it, but he can have straight arms, and he can push through on his hands through straight arms. Okay, and then we can make it even bigger, and he's coming up. So lots of ways to use a roll. Okay, let me bring me back in. If your child's bigger, you use a bigger towel. So use like a beach towel. If they're even bigger, you could use a beach towel rolled up with a yoga mat rolled around it, and that gives it a little bit more firmness and lets you do all those same things. The other thing that's really good, and I don't know if you've heard, so boppies are little cushions that are quite often associated with kind of breastfeeding. But boppies are brilliant with small children for so many different things, and boppies can be used. So they're like a curved cushion, and they can be used for tummy time really nicely. For a bigger child, you can use like a V cushion, so you can pick them up in most kind of household places. And V cushions again are really good. They can be used, we'll talk about them all the way through, but tummy time they can be used for, which is brilliant. The other way that you can do tummy time is to use a gym ball. So gym balls come in all different shapes, small, big, really big. And again, you can put your child over the gym ball on their tummy. So if you imagine they're on the ball, if you go forward on the ball, that's harder because they've got to lift up against gravity. But if you come backwards on the ball, they're still on their tummy, they're still pushing through their arms, they're still lifting their head up, but they've got a bit more support of the ball. So another way, and it's really fun on the ball because you can bounce and the children get a little bit more sensory feedback, and you've just got to make it as fun as possible. That is the key with loads of these things, is make it fun. Okay, so that's tummy time. Like I say, gets a lot of focus, and it is important, but it's only one position that works on the development. So lying on your back to play when you're awake is just as important. Why? Because it encourages, and this is the first time I'm going to talk about it, but I'm going to bring it in loads. It encourages contralateral movement. Contralateral movement is when you move your right arm and your left leg, or your left arm and your right leg. That's really hard to do on a screen because it's all opposites. But it's opposite arms, opposite arm and opposite leg. And if you think about it, that's how we walk. So when you swing your arms as you walk, you swing your opposite arm as the leg that you step. Contralateral movement is so important. It's a prerequisite for walking, it really, really is. And on their back, they can be moving their arms and legs. There's a lovely video on YouTube, a baby that has balloons tied to its arms and legs as it's playing. And when you watch the balloons bumping up and down, you really see how it's moving one arm and the opposite leg. It just shows you, and that's normal development. That's how children do learn. The other thing that is really important when they're on their back is that they can start to bring their hands into their visual field. They can start to bring their hands in to play. So it can start to work towards hand-eye coordination and hands into the middle. But what you've got to think about, because again, it's got to be achievable. We'll keep coming back to that. That's my washing machine beeping, sorry. The joys of lives. It's got to be achievable. So if your child lies on their back and their hands are kind of here, they're not going to be able to see their hand and they're not going to bring them into the visual field. So you might need to use a V cushion or a boppy or a couple of little cushions to bring their shoulders forward and bring their hands into their visual field so they can then start to work on hands together. The other thing you've got to think about, and again, something that makes it not achievable, is if your child's head is tilted back. They need to get the chin tuck to be able to, again, achieve getting their hands in. So to get the chin tuck, you'd want to think about maybe placing some cushions underneath so that you're bringing their chin down and forward. Again, put them maybe on an incline. So put them on an incline just encourages that chin tuck. So you can do that by raising their mattress up. You could lie them on cushions. So lots of ways just to put them on a bit of an incline encourages them to tuck that chin down, which is really, really important when they're playing on their back. Linking into that then is playing on your side. So using side lying as a position to help with their development. Side lying is brilliant because if they find that bringing their hands in difficult on their back, then on their side, gravity helps. Okay, they're automatically got their hands in front of their eyes. So they're automatically here, their hands are in front of their eyes, so they want to play with them, yeah, and they want to use them. It's brilliant for improving that hand-eye coordination, but again, you must support them. So if it's difficult for them to stay on their side and lie on their side, then they're not going to be able to think about anything else because they're going to be too busy thinking about maintaining the position. And what might happen then is that instead of staying a side lying, they just try and push back. So because they're really uncomfortable and unsteady and feel unsafe, they'll just try to push back. So dead easy, you roll your little towel up, you use a little cushion, or you use your hand and you just support at their back, just so that they can lean against it and it keeps them forward. And most importantly, it keeps that top shoulder forward. So again, it's making it achievable. What we've also got to think about, so we've got the positions, but so often children maybe can sit, they maybe can lie on their tummy, they maybe can lie on their back, but if they can't move in between those positions, so if they can't transition between those positions, then they feel stuck. And I see that all the time. Children that sit but don't move, they just sit, yeah? And they have to be placed in sitting or they have to be placed in standing, and they're not able to transition. And with the children that have got additional difficulties, that lack of transitioning is what frustrates them and what makes them dependent. And with some of the kids we work on, that is one of the most important things we work on, because they can sit and they can stand with support. But I want to get them moving themselves so that they can move in and out those positions, because that's what gives them the freedom, and ultimately that's what gives them the independence. What's really important about transitioning is the ability to cross the middle. So your midline, you've got to be able to cross it. And again, I see children that function like this. Okay, so they'll take from the right with the right, they'll take from the left with the left, and they might pass over, but they won't do this. And that ability to cross the midline and rotate is essential in transitioning. So we can help that all the time, every day. You're passing a child a toy. I'm passing Joe a toy and I want him to reach across the midline. So I'm going to hold onto this hand and get him to reach with this one. Okay? I'm going to hold onto this hand and get him to reach with this one. So it's where you present the toy, food, whatever you're doing. You're giving him his drink. You know, he's sitting in his chair, you're giving him his drink, just make him reach across. It's so easy just to slip it into everyday life, and it's got to happen that way, because otherwise you're not going to think, oh, I've got to do, you know, I've got to work on this, I've got to work on that. That gets really tiresome. So just slot things into every day. So that crossing the midline is one of the most important things. What we then can look at is how we move in the different positions. So one of the first things is rolling. Okay, so we can lie on our back, we can lie on our front, but can we roll? Okay, and you can help them roll really in a couple of ways. So you can, I'm going to roll him towards me so you can see where my hands are. So you can either help him here at his hip, so you can bring this hip round and let him worry about what his hands do and let him sort that out. Or you could bring his shoulder round and let him worry about what his legs are doing. Or if he really found that difficult and that frustrated him, then you facilitate both. You help both. You bring his hip and then you bring his shoulder. and then he's inside lying, and you support him so he can stay inside lying. We have to also think about how they move in and out of sitting. So again, children will sit, and then they'll sit. Now, my eldest sat for quite a while, and actually it was quite a blessing, because he sat and didn't move. Because once they move, they're harder to handle. But we want to encourage them to move. First thing, when you're sitting, you need to be able to lean on your hands on either side. So you need to have those weight bearing and those saving reactions. So playing games that he has to go side to side, or older kids knocking them off balance, playing a game, trying you can knock you off balance, try and keep you balanced, and they're pushing through those arms. So it's working on those saving reactions, and it's working on those shoulders, getting them stronger, ready. One of the other positions that I'm always banging on about, because I love it, is side sitting. So what's side sitting? The side sitting is when you sit with your legs to one side and your weight through one arm, okay? Side sitting, so either that way or that way. And we want to encourage both. We don't want to just work on one way. And side sitting is an essential position for transitioning, because we move from sitting to side sitting. And what that then does is that is so easy then to just get them onto all fours. Yeah, if a child is in side sitting, they're almost on all fours. They're like so close. So we can use side sitting to play. But we've got to think, we've got to really think about the support that we get and where we place our toys, so that we're making the absolute most of it. So, and we'll come back to purposeful play in a little while, and we'll talk more about where we put our toys. So side sitting, like I said, then makes it super easy. So we're side sitting. It makes it super easy with a little bit of a rotation round on his shoulder. So my hand's here on the shoulder. We can move towards all fours. Yeah, and we can move back. So all fours and back. Yeah, really easy transition. All fours is one of, again, is like really important. So we want to try and work towards crawling before we work towards walking. And the reason we want to do that is because crawling is a contralateral movement. So when you crawl, you move your right hand and your left leg, your left hand and your right leg. And that's a prerequisite for walking, like you said. If I see a child when they're, I see children when they're 9, 10, and they've got problems with coordination. Now, 9 times out of 10, if I unpick their development, they didn't crawl and they didn't practice that contralateral movement, and that can impede their balance in later days. Now, I am not saying for 1 minute all children need to crawl, not at all, because if a child is going to choose to bottom shuffle, or a child is going to choose to roll, or a child is going to choose to do some really dodgy crawl with one leg straight, and as they do, and that's their preferred way of mobility, that's how they're going to move. But we want to make sure they can crawl, and if they can crawl and we know they can do it, then that's fine. Yeah, we know they've got that skill. And quite often children might walk and then go back to crawling, and I will do that with children who are walking but might struggle. I'll go back and go back a little bit and work on, and again, rolling. So I've got a little boy I do see who is walking, but he didn't roll and he didn't crawl. So we work on that, and that's helping his walking. So it's helping him get better because he's able to rotate, he's able to cross the midline. So it's all unpicking. So if we can work on all the things first, we're going to give them the best chance to walk. So all fours, how do we look at all fours? So all fours is hard. It takes strength here, it takes strength here, it takes strength here. So we can work on these individually. So you can work on all fours by getting the arms stronger. So we've done lots of weight bearing arms already. So we can do wheelbarrows. So when children walk on their hands or weight bear on their hands, we can do work in high kneeling. So when you kneel up tall, that's really important because that helps strengthen the hips. So you're getting a little bit of work in high kneeling, you get a little bit of work on the shoulders, and then it can all come together. But you might need to support them in all fours. So like we did with I'll just raise it up. If you use a towel all the way under them, then that can support them on all fours, okay? Or they can do that over your leg. If you're sitting on the floor, small child can do all fours over your leg, and they've got that support at the tummy. So it just makes them not having to think about everything at the same time. And again, bigger child, towel and a yoga mat, make a bigger roll, put it under the tummy, and then they're working on their hands and their legs, but not worrying about the tummy. So it's really important. So then obviously when we get them on all fours and we get them in that position, they're then going to crawl. We're going to work on crawling. That's what we're going to work on. And then that takes you to high kneeling. And if they're high kneeling by the sofa, they're going to want to stand. So then you can look at transitioning up to standing. And to go from high kneeling to standing, what you need to do is what we call half kneeling. And that's when you get one leg up. So you're looking at how they get from the floor all the way up to standing. And once they're standing by the sofa or by the table, we can start to think, right, we want to get them stepping. How do we get them stepping? So before you can step, you've got to be able to transfer your weight. You've got to be able to transfer your weight to one leg and the other. Really easy way to do that with anyone is when they're standing with support by a table or a sofa, that you can just raise one leg up. So put it on a little step, because then they've got more weight on this leg. They've transferred the weight, and then you switch over. You put this leg up. And they're just playing, doing whatever, but you've got one leg up. They've transferred the weight. You're starting to show them how it feels. If they're standing by the sofa or a table, they're going to want to start to move their toys. And if they start to sidestep, we can make it a bit trickier. So put something in their way. So as they're sidestepping, if there's a toy in their way, they're going to have to step over it. And as they do that, they're on one leg. Yeah, and they step over it. And as they come back, they're on one leg. So we're just being a little bit clever about getting them doing that weight transference, moving towards that strengthening one leg at a time, moving towards that stepping. And that's what all leads us towards walking. So there's so much involved. That takes us on to purposeful play. Purposeful play is such an important part. So we want to be thinking, what are we trying to achieve? And we need to motivate them to achieve that goal. So what toys does my child like? What am I going to use to really motivate them to achieve what I'm trying to get them to achieve? You've got to kind of always think about that crossing the midline. You've got to think about that contralateral movement. So right arm, left leg, left arm, right leg. And you've got to think about where you place your toys. So toy placement is so important. Don't just put them in reach on the floor, because they're not going to, if they can get them, they're going to get them. They're not going to work hard if they don't have to. So, for example, if they're side sitting, you want the toys raised up. So because you want them to reach up to get the toys. So you want to put them on the sofa, you want to put them on a little table or a little puffy, or you can, boxes are great. Boxes can be used for so many things. Turn them upside down. Laundry baskets, turn them upside down. They're like a little table. And you can put your toys on that raised surface. Boxes and laundry baskets, though, you can also use for a child that's not quite stable in sitting. They can sit in them because they feel safe, they feel secure, so they build the confidence. Boxes and laundry baskets can also be used for high kneeling. So again, a child can high kneel. They've got that little bit of support, a nice little ledge to hold on to. And again, you think about where you put the toys, so you're raising them up high. You've got to also, when you're doing these kind of positions for purposeful play, you've also got to think about the support, because like I said right at the start, it's got to be achievable. If it's not achievable, your child's going to get frustrated. And if we get frustrated, we've kind of lost. So you've got to give, and if anything at the start, you give more support, because you can always ease off. So if you give more support, you think I'm doing it too much for them, then ease off. But think about the support you need. So to kind of summarise what we've talked about and what we've done, we've got to think about what is our goal. So what does my child need to do? What are they struggling with? What are they finding difficult? How can I motivate them to do that? So what is their favourite toy on that day? Because it will be different. Or, you know, there are some of my clients who I will see, we sometimes maybe motivate them at snack time or lunchtime, because that's when we can motivate them more. And what support must I give? So how do I handle? What additional things do I need? Is it a rolled up towel? Is it a box? Is it a laundry basket? Do I need to be on the floor with a sofa? Think about what support you need to give them to make it achievable. It's got to be achievable. And always, always, always at the back of your mind, you're thinking the two, crossing the midline and contralateral. Those two things are so important for development and for everything. And it can be done in such an easy way. So lots of different hints and tips there. And I think most importantly, if you're worried or if you're unsure about how to tailor it for your individual child and you've tried, it's not quite working, then get in touch. And we offer, we offer 15-minute free video consultations to get you started. I think my husband's just walked past the door. It's so loud. So we offer free 15-minute video consults to get people started, just to get them started on, and we can have a look and we can say, well, try this and try that. And like I say, moving forward, video consults are working, and that's by, how to keep people safe. But we are, doing face-to-face. But yeah, just give it a go. Just try some of the things we said and just give it a go. And like I said, if you get any questions, just let us know. Thank you very much for listening.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Lorna. It's been I obviously everything there. I also am a bit, it's really important, I think, for people to understand the building blocks, and it doesn't actually matter the age, because if that's what you're working on, going back to that is always important, and it's really, really key. You don't realize just how involved development is and how involved movement is, do you?
Oh, it's so complex. It's so complex. And I think, like you say, because quite often with some of my clients, I forget how old they are, because you're just working on what you're working on with them. And like you say, you're working on the stage of development that they're at. And like you say, it is unpicking it and looking at what are they struggling to do, because there is so much. I mean, crawling is just such a complex task. But you can work on everything individually, and you can, and like you say, it's even if they're only doing a few minutes, it's everything helps. Every little bit helps, and every little bit of kind of purposeful play or focused play just really, really helps.
And I think, going back to the tummy time as well, anybody who's watching this who's had a chat with me knows I'm a bit obsessed by it, because I think, especially for our kids with spina bifida, it's just such a key element of developing strength. Stretching out the front of the body, developing strength in the upper limbs, developing the strength to be able to sit and transfer and move. It's and I think sometimes parents of older children are like, oh, we're past that stage. I'm like, no, it's really, really always good to revisit it,
And it's realizing how you can do it in different ways, like I said, because quite often of any age they think, oh, well, I've got to put them flat, and then they hate it and they don't want to do it. And like you say, you can get them, they can all, like say on a ball, they can almost be upright, but they're still on their tummy, they're still lifting their head, they're still got their arms forward. It's still working on all the same things, but it's just understanding that it doesn't have to be just flat, because that is so hard, and so many children that we both see just hate that and struggle with that, and it's pointless really, because it just causes upset.
Yeah. And I suppose on that, have you got any tips on, we haven't had any questions through, but I know when I was listening, like a lot of times, sort of what if my child hates an activity, was really upset, and have you got, I kind of in my head, I often use distraction and like timers, visual timers, if the child is old enough to understand. Like for me, I think the key thing is sort of trying to distract them enough so that you end it in a happy way. Because I think I find so many children learn that, okay, well, if I get really upset, you'll rescue me and I don't need to do it. So I don't know.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes when I'm doing things, parents might think I cut things short, but it's like you've just said, I quit well in my head. So if I know that it's going to be a tricky position and I'm not going to like it, as soon as you get in success, initially I might actually only do it for a very short time, because like you say, you want to finish on a high, because so often if they start kicking off and then that's when you finish, they learn that, don't they? And then you kind of, it becomes a battle, and it becomes a battle of wills. But I think children are going to get, it isn't always, beautiful and happy and singing and none of our sessions are. And I think we all have times where the kids are like, they're hating it and they're getting upset, but that is okay. It is, life is tough sometimes, and even if a child doesn't have additional needs, they're going to be upset. Everybody gets upset. And I think it's just realizing that I'm not hurting them, and sometimes just kind of working through that and maybe coming away, but then coming back to it. And like you say, when you get that success and when it works, quit while you're ahead. But yeah, you are, it isn't, I think any therapist you talk to or anyone that works with kids, there's loads of times that the kids will get upset, and we kind of have to just, I don't want you to get upset, but you kind of have to get through it so that you can finish with them happy. And that's what I always, like you just said, I always try and do that. If we've had a tricky session and things have been really tough, I'll always try and finish on a positive so that the child goes away from the session feeling like they've achieved. And that's kind of obviously what I've kind of gone into, is making sure that they achieve, because children have got to feel like it's worth their while and that it's a happy experience. So like I said, don't be frightened of them being upset, but at the same time try and finish with them not being upset.
And it's definitely why I think, you know, you said it, and I definitely agree, is that little and often and fitting it into everyday life, you know. So as I think one of the most important things is that parents understand and are confident to carry on with the activities at home little and often. You know, it doesn't have to be an hour's therapy session in the house. It can be playing for 5-10 minutes, and that builds up over time. It's cumulative. So it's yeah.
Absolutely. And again, because I mean, the number of times we go and see people and they say, oh, we've not done anything, and then when you start unpicking stuff and talking, I'm like, oh my goodness, you've done loads. And it might be, you know, their child's got up in the morning and they've woken up and the parents have helped them roll over and get out of bed. Win-win. I'm like, that's brilliant, that's amazing. And you know, they don't realise how, some of them are amazing parents, don't realise that they're doing it all the time. And I'll say to them, oh, I wish everybody could. And like you say, it's just fitting in, because I mean, I am the worst person for like going to the gym. I'll go out for a walk and I love being in the outdoors, but I can't go to the gym. I just don't enjoy it. And I've done it over the years for little snippets. And I always kind of think, that's, if I'm saying to them, you've got to do an hour's physio 3 times a week, they aren't going to do it, or they might do it for a little while, but it's not realistic. So yeah, it's got to be fitted in. And these parents have enough. Parents have guilt anyway, don't they? We all have parental guilt, and I'm not doing enough, and I try my absolute hardest to make sure that I do not add to that, and that I make it fit into their lifestyles. And yeah, little and often, absolutely, and just play and enjoy them. Just have fun when you're doing it.
Yeah. No, lovely. So if anybody's watching and you do have any questions, put them in the comments, and Lorna and I will have a look and answer them. But thank you for watching, and thank you so much, Lorna. That was lovely. And Joe. And yeah, we'll see you again. What's the next one we're doing?
So the next one is the dynamic movement skills, which is kind of for children 5 and up, and it's a little bit more active and looking at balance, coordination. Can be for loads of children that are on their feet. It's brilliant for getting them that little bit fitter, a little bit more active, but moving better. There's a lot of things to encourage children to move more, but I'm really passionate about making them move better, not just move more. So yeah, that's an active one. I will be huffing and puffing probably in that one, so I'll warn you now.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Lorna. Thank you for your time.
Cheers, Ron.
Right. Cheers. Take care. Bye.